AB Twist. What up, everybody? My name is Abraham, aka AB Twist, and we're still back again at this exam. This is part two of the first part where we are in digital music systems. So basically, I am going to be doing a demonstration of how I came up with cleaning sound for a multi-track recording and just preparing it for a mix, a studio mix. So basically, the exam says, as a studio assistant on internship, you have been asked by the recording mixing engineer to prepare song recorded tracks for mixing. Demonstrate all necessary audio production techniques on the task to ensure industrial standard results. So, first question is saying I have to apply audio clip editing, timing correction, and pitch correction. So, the first thing I'm gonna wanna understand is what is audio clip editing. So, if I look at my Reaper here, as you can see, first thing I actually did was make sure that I arranged my elements, by color coding, even having some symbols. Just a quick breakdown of how I can do that is, for example, I have, let's see, what can we use? My piano. So I've got my piano left here. What I definitely want to do is, even before I actually change the colors, what I did was arrange everything according to the way I would want to be able to find it. As you can see, I started with my percussions, which are over here, my kick until my left and right overheads. So this whole group that's one color obviously is my percussions. And then next I added my vocal bus, my vocals first, sorry, and underneath here, you can see I also added a drum bus immediately after the drums so that I know where to locate my bus for everything, because I want to mix all this together. So I'll definitely send it to or route it to my drum bus. Next, I had my vocal and the vocal bus. There was only one vocal I was dealing with, which is that color. Next, I added my other effect buses because mainly I want to send some of these elements into my effects buses. Next, I had my acoustic guitars. So what I did was just make sure I color coded them to green. Yeah, so basically that's what I want to do. If I look at my brass stems, they also had it. I also added a color to them. For my choir, for example, we've got a choir. It's a synth. It's not an actual choir. So what I would want to do is options, track color. Let's add a track color, custom track color. Um, Maybe make that red. And okay, so now you can see that it's red. My other one as well here. Um, Color, custom color. That'll make red as well. Okay, so that's just the main basic first step you want to do is arrange your tracks. You can add your elements to them if you wanted to. Like for example, I had a tom and I want to name this. Let's look for the flow tom. So this is my flow tom. I could add an icon or a symbol icon here, and I can easily search for it. Let's say flow tom. Okay, they don't have it, so I can just type tom. And there's a tom right there, as you can see. So for all the other elements, you can do the same thing. And then eventually, after I did this, I moved on to my clip editing. So my clip editing is basically just being able to have, the first thing I want to do is have a gain stage. Gain staging is very important. So what I would want to make sure I do is I look at my tracks. Let me just unsolo all. I look at my tracks and find the highest pick based on my track itself when I play it, and also looking at where's the loudest point. And then once I find the loudest point, I'm able to just volume control on them. So I have to make sure that I'm also looking at my meter levels. Sorry, it's a bit sluggish. My PC is running out of space, but the whole point is finding the loudest part of this project. And once I do that, I am able to now, let me just view this. I can take down my mixer, and for example, this is my loudest part. Or these, if I look at my sub kick pattern, and I notice, okay, this is louder than this part of the same wave. What I would want to do is just zoom in. As you can see, this is like the level of where almost everything is hitting. But if I notice one that's higher than the other one, I can easily just split that and do my manual volume control, just so that I can have a nice smooth signal, clip gaining as well, that no signal is too hot as compared to the other one. Like for example, this one was quite loud. I can now bring it to a level where it's constant, you know. So I'll just do one more. We can do another one. So as you can see, you can keep going until you're satisfied with the level of how your signal looks like. Is it a nice straight signal, your wave? Is it, yeah, dynamics are important, but you don't want where it's too loud and then it just drops. You basically want a nice clip gain for your tracks. And then after that, after I do my clip editing, of course there's certain elements that I want to cut out. So I will give you an example of what I did with my snare here. If you look at my snare, um, ideally this is what it was. It was one track. I need a part where there's okay, we can use the hi-hats. So if you look at my hi-hat here, I'm gonna solo this so that we know what's going on here. So that's my hi-hat. I don't think I need to cut out anything there. I'm looking for an element that was playing and had bleed in it. Okay, let's stick to my snare. I think it's one that can be a good example. Yeah, so I just want to show you something. Yeah. So this is my fundamental frequency. This is my snare microphone picking up this snare. And then the rest was being picked up by other drum microphones. So if I solo this, I'm sure you can hear that. That's not part of the snare. That was just bleed from other microphones. So clearly, I want to get rid of that, and the silent parts of the song. If there's nothing playing, I mean, I might as well get rid of it so that I have clean signal, and the silent where it needs to be silent. So I would just select that and delete that part. Same as for this as well. Um, this is part of my cleaning, my audio clip editing phase. So yeah, then you get a nice clean signal like this, and that way it plays only the fundamental frequency, which is my snare, and it goes silent, my snare again, then playing other elements in between, because that will cause a dirty mix, where microphones are bleeding with each other. There's also a point where you can use a gate, but ideally there are certain frequencies, signal to noise ratio, they might be clashing. Your fundamental frequency might be this big and then your noise might be this big. So if you add a gate, it will end up cutting out your frequencies and you losing out on frequencies. So the first thing you want to do is clear your audio. And then obviously after clearing my audio, I want to now move to my dynamics, basic dynamics, just panning my instruments so that I get a stereo field. This is just a quick, without effects yet, just getting a clean mix so that even when it's in your headset, so it's playing out there, it's stereo. So this is the part where I pan some of my elements. Um, as you can see, let me just view my mixer. For example, my cymbal overheads. These are overhead microphones. So what I made sure was pan one right 100%, pan the other one left 100%. And for my drum kit as well, my percussions, if you can see, I pan my snare 30%, 50% left, 30% left. So basically, I was trying to add a section of where if you listen to it, okay, this is where the drum kit was, except for certain elements like my low elements. My bass kick was in the center. I can have my bass instruments as well in the center. My lead vocalist can be in the center. And maybe if there were backing vocalists, I could put them either left or right just to, have the main things follow each other. I would want a very nice stereo field, I don't want everything clashing in the center. So after panning my instruments. The next thing that I'll jump on is obviously my time correction, because I mean there's certain times where a drummer plays off timing, and it's normal. I mean, you can get carried away. So for that, I just basically applied manual stretching, manual nagging. Um, let's look at my kick, for example. If you look at this is my tempo. It's always important to work with the tempo. So I was working with the tempo and I knew that, okay, this is where everything should play, you know. So if I notice something that's playing slightly off key, off tempo, for example, this part here, I could be able to, manually, let me just do, manually move it by slicing it. So after slicing the part that I feel needs to be moved on my grid line, I mean, because I have a tempo, so it's important to follow my grid line. I could be able to just move it onto my grid line. Then it plays on time. As you can see, all of them are playing on the line. So this one was a bit too early. I could select that. Make sure that I'm working with the grid line here. So as you can see, all this here is slightly off timing until I find the point where he played back on time, which was here. So I'd want to select this, select, and just go back to where it started from and just move it on my tempo. So that's part of your correction. Sometimes you need to stretch elements if they were playing too fast. Like if you had a keyboard that was playing too fast, you could be able to stretch that element so that it fits the bar. So I did most of that, and this is just basic way and the easiest way method that I would say you can be able to correct your time correction. Your pitch correction now comes in with the vocal. So I went on and looked at my pitch correction with my vocal here. Let me just find it. Oops. Which is this one. So I can go to my auto key. So the first thing I did was make sure I add an auto cue, which helps me find the key of the song. It would actually listen. It finds it if it's a C minor, meaning the song was played in a C minor, and I would be able now to match my key, my singing vocal to the key. Sometimes, to be honest with you, like not everything needs um, auto tune and the like. It always depends on the signal source. So if your singer is really good and is matching the key as what the instrumentalists are playing, I think it's you barely need it. You just might need it just for a bit of some smoothening. But yeah, this is how you apply your auto key, and then you add your auto tune once you find your key, and make sure that it's playing either in a minor or a major chord note. So yeah, that was my pitch correction that I only used, was my auto tune, which is over here. um, I can play it without it. So that's without the auto tune, and that's with the auto tune. And it says G minor, it's shifting. So those are the steps that are very important when it comes to mixing. The first things you want to do is obviously make sure that all your tracks are labeled and correctly, as your tracking list is good, labeled and visual in terms of color coding and your icons as well. And then next you want to do your clip editing, where you do your gain, your volume gain, where you match each volume, so that not one point is extremely louder than the other before you even add your dynamic compressors and the like. You want a nice smooth signal. So after, yes, I jump on to question 2, which speaks about tonal processing. So tonal processing is basically um, how the sound of each element, what's the tone for each element. So I'll talk a bit about the percussions, what I did for my tone. So if I open this here, let's have it. This deprives of my EQs, my compressors. So the first thing I did obviously was add an EQ. Now, what is important about an EQ? Why do we add an EQ? Basically, is to shape the sound. If I There may definitely things that we need. For example, like my low shelf, your kick is definitely supposed to have a nice low shelf, and then you wanna cut out all the high frequencies because it's a low frequency tone. So you make sure you add an EQ that can match your low frequency tones. And then next I added my compression, which was obviously just bringing out my kick exactly the way it's supposed to be after my volume control. So for my EQ, yeah, this is what my EQ looked like for my kick top, um, my kick in, sorry, and for my kick out, if you look at it, so this is what they look like. This is my kick in, my kick out. As you can see, it has more low ends as compared to my kick in. And then I completely shelved off my high shelf. I shelved off all my. I added a high pass filter at the bottom here to cut out all my highs, and also killed all my highs here. Same with this one, I kind of killed some highs, but this was my pop sound. I was trying to have a nice kick with a bit of a pop sound. So this was for my pop, and this was for my low ends. So yeah, and for all these elements, there's when you're applying your EQ, the basics that you can actually just do is add a low cut and a high shelf. So basically, for most of my high instruments, which was my snare, my hi hats, my toms, I added high cuts. I made sure that I added a low pass filter for all of them, and then for my low instruments like my bass and my kick itself, bass guitar, I mean, I need to make sure that I have a low pass filter. That way, I'm cutting out all the highs and just allowing the lows to come in. So yeah, and for my vocal as well, if you take a look at my vocal EQ, it's also important that I shelf off. I add a low cut, sorry, to my vocal, because I don't need so many low ends on my vocal. So that's also just shaping your sounds and putting them on your spectrum, your frequency spectrum, from your low instruments to your mid range to your high range instruments. That's what an EQ helps with. So Yeah, that was my tonal processing, my dynamic processing as well. It was just my compressors, how loud is my, like how the depth of the mix, what comes forward, what is closer to your ears, based on your dynamic processing, which is my compressing, which is over there. And then for my FX processing, I literally just made a bus for this mix. Um, Certain instruments, I just routed them straight to my bus. I didn't put each and every element having, my FX processing. Certain things just needed to go through, like my reverb, for example, for my vocal. Some snare drums had some reverb. My guitars had some reverb as well. Just to give an ambience feel to the mix itself so that it's not so dry. You could also add some delays, which I did for my lead vocal. There was a bit of some delay. That's all part of my FX processing, which runs through its own bus. If I can find the bus here, where's my bus? Yeah, there we go. Hmm. Sorry, my program is just quite slow. So I had my effects bus here, which is my delay. And as you can see, I added my Valhalla delay, and also just added an EQ so that I don't have too many lows. It shouldn't sound too boomy, it shouldn't sound too high. This is my EQ for my bus itself. I could add a compression to it so that it comes out, but I prefer it without that. So yeah, these are the the steps that I followed when coming up with this mix. So I hope it puts together and makes sense when everything is put together. And I thank you for sticking to.